This is the Auburn Podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. Zach Blackerby and Painter Sharpless here with you. And Painter, who's our guest today?
Rich Perkins, that voice you can hear on Wings 94.3 right here in the Auburn-Opelika area.
Rich, what's up, man?
Well, I'm just happy to be here. Very happy to be here.
We're happy that you're here, man. We are so happy that you're here. We're doing a mailbag question tomorrow. Ooh. So tweet at us at Z Blackerby or at Paint Sharpless to ask us some questions. But with spring practice coming up, I thought it'd be kind of fitting for us to share our thoughts of kind of things we're looking forward to and kind of looking at with this Auburn team. And I really think there's one key story, and then everything else is just kind of supplemental. But, I mean, obviously, I've got three things, and I'll start with the obvious one, quarterback competition. And really, I'm interested to see how long Gus is going to act like this is a legitimate four-horse race for a quarterback, because I don't think any of us believe that really four guys have a chance to start at quarterback next year.
No. I think it's down to two, really. I mean, don't you think it's Bo Nix and Joey Gatewood?
Yeah, I think Malik Willis has kind of slipped out of this.
I think right now those are the two.
And
those are the two in the clubhouse.
We call them Bro Nix now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It just so happens that last week I was at Stinky's Fish Camp.
Okay.
And I was with Auburn head equestrian coach Greg Williams right after they won the regular season championship, going undefeated for the first time in the history of college equestrian.
He's good at what he does.
It's kind of a big deal.
Right. He really likes you, too.
He's a good guy.
But he really likes you.
What's not to like?
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just pointing it out so people know.
Thank you.
That's all I'm doing.
He's a good guy. We get along very well. At any rate, I was at Stinky's sharing a celebratory cocktail with he and his lovely wife Sandy, and Auburn legend and national championship quarterback Lloyd Nix.
Yeah.
Strolled into Stinky's Fish Camp, and they know each other, and Mr. Nix came up and introduced, said hi to Greg, congratulated Coach Williams, and they were talking, and some of the equestrian parents were there. They're obviously big donor people. A lot of them are Auburn people.
Uh-huh.
And the situation about quarterbacks came up.
Right. And how could it not?
Exactly. And Lloyd Nix said, I tell you what, I've seen Gatewood, and he's good, but this Nix kid, he's the deal. So take that for what it's worth, but I thought it interesting that one Nix picked out the other as the guy with the highest ceiling and the most potential.
Right. And I think it's interesting to kind of speculate, how much can Bo do just in the spring?
Sure.
I mean, how much can he
take in? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's going to be cognitive. I mean, obviously some of it's going to be physical as well, and just kind of, figuring out the timing with the receivers and the playbook, and just kind of getting accustomed to the speed, transitioning from high school to college. And, we've seen some of the greats do that more recently, whether it's Tua or,
Trevor Lawrence.
Thank you. I always have a hard time remembering his name. I don't know why. He's going to play for the Patriots in a few years. I think I feel like I should be able to remember that.
I also am in this.
Y'all didn't care. Okay.
In this class that thinks Bo Nix will be the starter, but I'm also like, what am I really basing that on? Because
upside. I think you're basing it on upside.
Upside is part of it, and I think
Mr. Football.
It's also weird that the guy with the most experience, we almost think that experience. Is it meaningless? Like, what is because that would have been in a lot of years the calling card from Malik Willis as well. He's been on campus the longest. He's played in some games like that. That seems to actually not necessarily be helping his case anymore. In that it seems like the opportunity passed him is the feeling I get when people talk about Malik Willis.
But once again, though, for Malik, I think you look at those three and I think it's clear that he has the least amount of upside, right? Because I think the sample size is there now. Not as much as maybe Auburn fans would have liked it to be last year, because he didn't play a whole lot last year. But from what we've seen, I'm not convinced that he's ever going to be a passing threat. And I don't think you can win a championship unless you're a passing threat.
I think, Painter, you're right. It may have hurt him on a personal level, but I think if he was the guy, like if he had all the tools, we wouldn't be having the Gatewood-Nix discussion. Like, it would be a front runner. He would be a shoo-in. He would be the heir apparent.
Yeah.
And he's not. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about his perceived skill set and like you said, his ceiling, his upside.
Well, you think about the Jeremy Johnson race a few years ago, and it was evident, like you're saying, there was going to be this transition. There's been 2 years of Nick Marshall, and now there will be Jeremy Johnson, and it was no surprise when he was pretty quickly named the guy. This year, though, you're right. You've got a guy with experience, and it doesn't seem, it's certainly an open competition, and it doesn't seem like that experience has given a lot of people confidence that he will be the starter, which is interesting to me that, again, I don't think the experience hurts him, but it hasn't really benefited him, and that we're talking about Malik Willis, and it's almost as if the moment has passed him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, let's face it. You had a transfer come in and take over QB. I mean, if Malik was the guy, if he was going to be the guy, I don't know. I don't know that they would have been as quick to bring in Stidham. There are all these questions that kind of fall in. If Malik really had, Malik's a great athlete. He's tremendous. He's got a lot of speed. There are many things that he does well. I don't know that he has the ability to develop into what we think of as a traditional Gus style quarterback.
Yeah, and so now I think it's interesting, as far as end game here, like, can any quarterback win it in the spring? I mean, if they go lights out from start to finish, and I think if someone were to be named the starting quarterback in spring, I think it's a very, very unlikely scenario, but they would have to be going all out, and then I think everyone else would really have to just kind of fall off, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's probably accurate.
And I think there's a lot of benefits to taking the competition, maybe narrowing it down to two guys officially, and then taking the competition into fall camp. I mean, competition makes people better. We've talked about this in the past. Sure. And we talked about it with the first year with Stidham. With the whole is it Stidham or is it White?
I mean, they didn't name Cam after the spring, did they?
Sure.
I think he was named about 11 days after spring practice. He was one of the few that was not named in the fall.
Is that true? I couldn't remember. My memory was that it happened in the fall, but
most
of
the time, you're right. These quarterback decisions have happened in the fall. Like Nick Marshall didn't get to Auburn until the end of the summer.
Yeah.
I think that you're right, Zach. I would be shocked if we found out who the quarterback is, in April.
Right.
And I think there's upside to that. How much do you believe that Joey Gatewood does himself a favor, since it seems like, based on what Rich was saying a moment ago, that the general consensus is this is kind of a two-guy race, and it's Joey Gatewood who showed promise during bowl practice and the hotshot newcomer, Bo Nix. Like, does Gatewood surprise some people?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could happen.
Absolutely,
it certainly could. And I think it's good for Auburn if he does surprise people.
Yeah, it could be that it's too early and the stage is a little bit too big for Bo Nix. It doesn't seem like that's the case,
right?
But it could very well be the case that he gets here and it's a little bit too fast, and maybe he's been a big fish in a small pond, and maybe it's he's not ready and not the savior that everybody thinks he is, and Gatewood comes along and absolutely kills it. And if he does, I think you're right, Zach. If that means, hey, you've got Bo Nix 1 year to get comfortable with speed and to develop, before there's another, open competition, you give him time now. He's got 4 games that he can get reps in and still not lose a red shirt.
Long term, how good is it if Bo Nix does win this job? Because, Zach, I think we talked about this the other day. If Bo Nix wins this job, I'm assuming he's the quarterback for at least the next 3 years, unless someone very impressive comes behind him in another year and takes the job from him.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he's as good as he can be, as good as this hype around him is, I think Auburn's got a 3-year window to do something. And I think, by the time his junior year, when you get this, the Auburn and Georgia game at home again, I think you've got a chance to really do something.
I just think it's interesting because I'm with you, Zach, and I think, Rich, it sounds like to some extent you're in the same boat, although I won't speak for you. But I know on the lunch break, Justin and I seem to both think come the Oregon game, it will be Bo Nix that is the guy for Auburn. But what are we really basing that on? And again, to your point, I know some of that is upside and what you, I guess, believe Gus Malzahn wants to do with this offense and that Bo Nix is the best one to execute that.
Yeah. If you're listening to this podcast and you enjoy the podcast, we would love your support. We're trying to make this thing every day, every weekday for all year round. And so we would love your support on our Patreon page. You can go to the show notes, the show description, however you're listening on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, whatever. And just click support the show. That takes you to the Patreon page. Or you can go to auburnpodcast.com and click on become a patron there. There's some links to it there. Whatever you're willing to set aside every month, we'd really appreciate it for supporting the show. Another thing that I'm looking at for Auburn as they head into spring ball, the linebacker situation. Obviously, you lose Deshaun Davis, and there's kind of different opinions on how much of an impact he had. Obviously, he had a lot of impact on the field in regards to where folks needed to be. People refer to him as a defensive coordinator on the field. I think as far as lateral movement and the ability to cover, I think there's guys on this team that are going to maybe be able to take another step forward. Maybe not immediately, but long term. But just kind of looking at the guys that Auburn they're going to be kind of fielding in to replace a linebacking core. I mean, Owen Papo, Michael Harris, Chandler Wooten, KJ Britt, Zacoby McClain. What does Josh Marsh look like in this defense? I mean, there's a lot of guys that I'm really eager to look at and excited to see what they do. And also, how much of an impact, how important is it for them to play at such a high level with the defensive line that's playing in front of them? I think that's going to be interesting to see.
I think this all comes back to coaching.
Yeah, and Travis Williams has done that.
I mean this is one of those. When you look at the linebacking core and you look at the offensive front line, those are the two things where I think that the stability of coaching is going to be crucial. Going from last season into this season, to maintain that linebacking core and to keep improving what was a at times, well, let's say underperforming offensive line. I mean, I think the coaching is. I think Auburn's got the bodies, and Auburn has the talent. I think it's just from my perspective, it's that all comes down to how well are those players being developed, and that's coaches.
The good news for Auburn here with the inexperienced linebacker core has to be that in front of them is arguably going to be one of the better defensive line units in the country. So I think that this group gets better as the year goes on. I don't think, by the way, it starts off as a poor group. I just think that there could be an adjustment in terms of where some of that leadership comes from. One of the things that Deshaun Davis got so much credit for was, like you were saying, his ability to get everyone lined up properly. So who takes over that role? Is it a nice transition? You're right. I think Travis Williams has done a good job of proving he can keep guys moving through their system. And then Owen Papo is everything you want, I think, in this era of linebackers where you need guys to cover and be able to kind of have a plethora of roles.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean,
and he's got the name. I mean, you have to have the name, and he's got the name.
Owen Papo's a good name.
It's a great name for a linebacker.
There's no doubt about it.
I'm excited about Britt as well. I know that we've sort of given him a hard time for perhaps having the most lackadaisical nickname of all time.
Worst nickname ever, yeah.
But I do think that this is going to be a unit that has a strong season. Do you feel that way, Zach? I think it's also kind of hard to tell because really we've seen them in such a limited capacity, but I'm sort of basing my optimism around Coach Williams and of course, the benefit they have with that defensive unit in front of them.
Yeah, I think downhill Britt's going to have a decent season. And, everyone talks about, how deep the younger guys are with these linebackers, but the thing is you only need two just because Auburn's going to go nickel for a lot of the time. So can they find two of those guys? I think it's clear one of them's probably going to be Owen Papo. Then the other is does Zacoby McClain step up? I've heard good things about him. Downhill Britt. It doesn't really matter who it is. Just, whoever's that number two guy, That's really kind of where that cutoff line is. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of 3 linebacker sets throughout the season, but I think they're going to be able to do it largely just because of the defensive front that's in front of them. I mean, there were several stretches, the last 2 seasons where, Deshaun Davis and even, dating back to when Trey Williams was at Auburn, where, they're just not getting touched by opposing offensive linemen because you got to double a few guys on the defensive front. And so they had a free...
Their life is easier.
Yeah, they had a free track to the ball carrier. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. And we won't know the answer to that really until... I mean, you can see it a little bit late A, but what are we kidding? That doesn't mean anything. So the third situation, or the third thing that I'm looking at, and this is another thing, I don't know how much we can get from spring practice, but the running back rotation from a personnel standpoint doesn't look a whole lot different than it did a year ago, but I still think there's a lot of Auburn fans that are on the Boobie Whitlow train. I think there's some fans that are all about Cam Martin. I mean, what are your thoughts about running backs moving forward as we head up to spring practice?
I enjoyed the way we saw the mixture of backs in the bowl game. I think Boobie Whitlow's the guy moving forward that probably has more production than Cam Martin, but I think there's certainly, with Gus Malzahn, based on what we saw in the bowl game, more of a role for Cam Martin than perhaps what we saw throughout the last season. And I think that's a nice combination. I also am curious to see how, will we see more end rounds, guys like Anthony Schwartz getting involved?
Yeah.
And if that will impact the amount of touches that running backs get. Corey Grant sort of filled that role at one point. So I think this is a more productive unit with a better offensive line this season. And I think Boobie Whitlow staying healthy, which was a big question mark last year, will be critical to the rest of the backfield success.
Yeah. And obviously the best player on the team, Sean Shivers, how does he work his way into the offense?
I'm a well-known Boobie guy.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're pro Boobie?
I'm pro Boobie. I
respect that about you.
I always go back. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I try to lead the way. I always think back to that final year with Trey Mason whenever we start talking about who is the guy going to be, because Trey Mason was by the end of that season he was unquestionably the guy, but that didn't. Nobody really foresaw that going into the season. He was one of the guys, and then he emerged. And I think that's just the way Gus teams work. You think you've got something that works out, and it could be that Cam Martin, for whatever reason, hits his stride and takes the lead on this, or Boobie, you pick one. Right. I mean, it's almost impossible in a Gus Malzahn offense to figure out who that guy's going to be.
We're proud to partner with Fanatics, and our item of the day, Painter, you did a great job talking up yesterday's item, but today's item is an Auburn baseball cap, on the field cap that the players wear, and I kind of wanted to let this be the item of the day to kind of give a shout out to Auburn baseball. One, what they're doing. Two, their big win last night against South Alabama. That is not a
USA
gimme game.
Nope. USA is a historical powerhouse in baseball.
And they lead that series
by a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And then with Auburn, their first SEC series is this weekend against Tennessee, 21st ranked Tennessee, and that is at Plainsman Park for a 3-game series. So that's going to be awesome. But what should they wear specifically to that game, Painter?
I would wear a wondrous orange billed Auburn hat. Now, it's got some breathable action on the top.
Oh, yes.
I'm a big fan of the orange bill, though. I think that's a nice, classy touch.
Right.
Maybe you sprinkle a little dirt on it, give it the old worn, rugged look. So
yeah, act like you've had it for a long time.
Yeah, I'm pro Auburn orange bill hat.
As long as that bill is curved. That's my only.
Oh, there's a slight curve.
There's a slight curve.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge bend in the hat guy, but I do want a slight break.
Slight curve.
And that's what we've got here.
Right. Rich is anti flat bill hat.
Yes.
Okay.
So
adamant.
Next time he comes on, that needs to be the item of the day, a flat bill hat.
Flat bill Auburn.
But yeah, if you want to support the show and support your Auburn swag and Auburn baseball, check out our show notes and click the link for the Fanatics item of the day. It's a sharp looking hat. So just wanted to give baseball a shout out. And then of course they get their SEC action going this weekend. And I was kind of, playing around with the idea of, how much do we want to talk about the SEC tournament, just with, the timeliness of, how podcasts work. A lot of people listen the following day. But as we're recording this, Auburn tomorrow will play the winner of tonight's game between Georgia and Missouri. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, Painter. But Rich, your thoughts on this team, this basketball team, kind of playing its best ball over the last few weeks? What are your expectations as they go into the SEC tournament?
Yeah, I think it was very. There's so many things that I love about Bruce Pearl. One of the things that I've always appreciated about him is his transparency and his willingness to take ownership. And he literally did that when asked about none of his Auburn teams winning a game in the SEC tournament. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I own that. That's on me. And I so appreciate that for him. You could probably not ask for a better draw than Missouri or Georgia, I think, for your first game.
Sure.
So I think this is going to be a good time. They've got some time to rest up after a very emotional win over Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So they've got some time to rest, to kind of come back off that, to get focused with the bye. So now they take on the winner. And I think this is good because I think Georgia, the way Georgia and Missouri play, there's a good chance they're going to beat each other up a little bit.
That's a good point. I never thought about that.
And that, I think, plays well for Auburn. The way Pearl runs that team and as good as they can be defensively, I think that's going to give them an edge. I said it before the Tennessee game, almost jokingly, but if Chuma is on his game, it seems like right now, as Chuma goes, so goes the Tigers. Mm-hmm. And if he can stay on his game, I like Auburn to win 2 games in the tourney.
Sweet. That was our question we asked yesterday on the show. Yeah.
So I think they win. I think if the over under is 1.5, I'm taking the over.
What if it's 2.5?
I'm still taking the over, baby.
Are you?
I'm still feeling like the Tigers.
I think I'll take
3.
the under at 2.5.
At 2.5, I'm taking the under.
I think most people are.
But
I think most people are.
But I would not deride somebody for taking the over on it.
Rich, where can people find you and hear you, bud?
You can hear me weekdays from 6 to 9 on Wings 94.3, online at wingsfm.com. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichWDE Perkins.
And Painter.
I'm at Paint Sharpless. You can hear me from 11 to 1 with Justin Ferguson on ESPN 106.7. That's available locally in Auburn, Opelika on 106.7 or from anywhere at espnau.com. So you can listen on your desktop or get the ESPN 106.7 app on your phone.
And this has been another edition of the Auburn Podcast.